Welcome back to the 50 to 70 podcast, brought to you in association with 3FE Coffee. Get it all on 3fe.com or indeed from any of their stores all around Dublin. I am your host, Dave Humphreys, and across from me,
Cormac Singleton.
Hello, how are you, Cormac?
Tired.
You're always tired.
Yeah, it's been a long day.
It's been a long day, but that will not impact how many things we're going to talk to you about today. Specifically, we have to talk about motor shows.
We do, but before we go further, there's some light housekeeping that we need to do, which is, if you listened to last week's podcast, you would have heard us say at the start that we won't be talking about San Moritz. Minutes later, we talked a lot about San Moritz. What happened there is we went off on a tangent and we were aware of it.
Well, we go off on tangents a lot, so...
Usually they're just not recorded.
You just have to kind of... That's part of this free service that we provide.
Yeah. Look,
it's just one of the wonders of public broadcasting.
It's recorded live and as is, and we figured it was better to give it to you with a grammatical mistake than
nobody complained.
Cut it out.
The important thing is nobody complained, at least to us.
I complained to myself.
Okay, but that's okay. But anyway.
Yeah, we tangented. There you go. It happened. It'll probably happen again.
Yes.
But yeah, we're aware of it.
Think of it like some kind of really bad, obvious Easter egg that we put in the show.
Yeah.
There you go. Anyway, motor shows. Okay, last week, after we did San Moritz, if you haven't heard about our amazing San Moritz adventure, please go back and download the previous episode and obviously check out
and then watch it on YouTube
as well. So, yes, after that, I hightailed it, left you in Zurich and hightailed it to Geneva. Now, Geneva was the motor show of the year, as far as I'm concerned. So this was, the greatest motor show.
2003, I was there. It was one of the first unveilings of the Enzo. I was in a Bentley Arnage playing with the rear electric seats.
Were you like 4 years old then?
2003.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, so for those who don't know, throughout the year, we have these motor shows where, brands come along and they have a big public unveiling of new models or concept cars or whatever it is. And they typically take place, like there's generally always been set motor shows. There was Detroit, which was always at the very start of the year and was always absolutely Baltic cold. The first European show of the year was always traditionally Geneva. Part of the whole history of Geneva is that the show's been run for like 100 years. It was always the first big European show of the whole season. Blah, 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 blah. It was neutral ground, so all the manufacturers came to it. And traditionally speaking, every car manufacturer always kind of brought their A game to Geneva. It was like the first big deal of the year.
Huge. In the PAL Expo, which is attached to the airport, it's a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to it, there's days of content in there. Just walk around looking at stuff.
And it used to work really, 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 really well. But then what happened a couple of years ago, well, not a couple of years ago, it was a kind of a gradual thing that the people who organized the show, the people who owned the hotels around the show, the people who owned the restaurants, they all just frankly got really greedy. And they realized, hang on, we can milk these people for an awful lot more money. So what would happen was, obviously, basically, all the brands would be there. They'd be bringing people in. They'd be bringing journalists, hosting people, all this kind of stuff. And then it became this thing of, you can't book a hotel for the night. You've got to book them for 3 nights. And the price is actually going to be 4 or 5 times whatever the normal rate was. So it basically became this enormous kind of shakedown. And the industry kind of ran with it for a while, and then it just kind of got to the point where it was getting a bit too much. Then COVID happened. And the thing about COVID was that it's, 4 years now since COVID happened? And COVID happened around this time, which is sort of where we're in early March right now. And it was around about the time when the show used to always happen. And they were building up the show and getting everything ready. And literally like 2 days before the show was meant to open, the organisers went, we can't do the show because the Swiss local government have said that the canton of Geneva has said we can't host the show anymore. And, we put our hands up and that's it. And
there were pictures of the stands built.
Yeah, because there's a huge amount of work goes into setting up these kind of big, huge trade shows, and obviously all the car brands are trying to outdo each other in terms of how elaborate their stages are and their stands and all this kind of stuff. And basically, they kind of cried, oh, well, yeah, what can we do? That's it, COVID, blah, 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 global lockdown. And that was kind of it. And then the show hasn't been back since until this year. Except this year it came back, and now it's kind of backed by Qatari money, which is not a great way really to kind of fund your process. But they're back, except there really wasn't much of a show this year.
Well, they also had it in Qatar.
They had
the Geneva show in Qatar.
They basically sold the rights to the name of the show. So late last year there was the Geneva Motor Show in Qatar, which I'm kind of disappointed that some of the journalists went to, because Qatar, let's face it, it's not exactly the best country in the world when it comes to, I don't know, human rights. But anyway, they kind of decided to have it there first as a bit like, hey, look at us, we're great, because we just want to, it's like sport washing, greenwashing, everything else. They're like, hey, don't look over there, look over here. It's a motor show, shiny things.
It's Switzerland, but in the desert.
Exactly. So anyway, there is now an actual Geneva show, and it's back. But it was a bit of if I'm honest, it was a pretty depressing affair. And I think my tweet of the day was just hashtag RIP Geneva Motor Show. And I think that kind of summed it up.
Yeah.
So basically you have no Stellantis being kind of 14 brands, so like Alfa, Fiat, like Citroen, Alfa Romeo, Lancia, they're all gone. They were like, we're not going. The Volkswagen Group, we're not going. So that's like Volkswagen, Seat, Cupra, Skoda, Audi, Porsche, Bentley, Lamborghini, not there. Ford, we're not going. Mercedes, we're not going. BMW, we're not going. I mean, Toyota, they weren't there either. So you basically had what used to be the number one show in Europe, now had Renault, Dacia, BYD.
Was Nissan there? Renault?
No, they weren't there. No, it was only the French side and the Romanian side of the family. Then you had a couple of there was an ambulance there for some reason in the middle of the hall. I'm not sure if that was maybe to try. I don't know if that was to try and resuscitate the show itself. It was just some sort of metaphor. And then Lucid were there. You had MG, and then you BYD, and that was it. So you basically had 4 brands. You had 3 brands because Lucid really aren't really doing anything in Europe at the moment.
And if you're listening to this the week it's published, think of the Scottish Willy Wonka experience.
Yes.
That's
what the Geneva Motor Show has become.
Except for one big corner.
Yes. And basically one side of the hall was the Renault stand. And Renault obviously had a reason to be there. Not because its CEO, Luca De Meo, is the president of the ACA, but because, and it really had to be there, but because they had the new Renault 5 there. And I've got to say, it's fucking cool.
Yeah, 28 years since it went off sale.
This thing is, it is absolutely, totally a retro homage to the original Renault 5, which, do you know how many Renault 5s they sold originally?
Lots.
9 million.
That's lots.
That's when I heard that, I was like, I went and looked it up because I was like, really? I was like, yeah, they really sold that many. Anyway, it is very, very cool. And yes, it is totally a modern day, they basically took it and turned it into a modern EV. And I'm actually totally okay with that. This is possibly an even cooler, let's do a retro homage thing than when Fiat did the first Fiat 500, modern Fiat 500.
We've had
really good.
A couple of these. We've had the Mini, the Beetle, the Fiat 500.
Yeah. The Beetle has never been a good
Now,
good one.
It depends on what way you want to look at this, because it could be a retro throwback, or it could also be a 911 situation where all 3 generations of the Renault 5 now look the same.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is more retro cool than
it is.
than just an evolution of. But yeah, I mean, so obviously it's only going to be an EV now, which I'm okay with. Again, that's fine. We need more small, cheap, affordable EVs rather than...
And they were never going to come out with a maxi turbo.
No.
So
There is going to be an Alpine version, though, which we'll maybe circle back to that in a moment.
have more blue.
It will have some more white, actually.
Oh.
Well, it's more white now than blue, believe it or not. That's where Alpine is going.
And in a couple of years, more red.
But this is a super cool thing. If you haven't seen it already, go over to Complete Car. We've got a whole video on it from the reveal on the YouTube channel. This is just, it's a very, very cool thing. There's a lot of really cool detail. I spent a lot of time looking around it because, frankly, there was nothing else to really look at the Geneva Motor Show this year. So I had a lot of time to kill because my flight wasn't until like 7 o'clock that night. But it's cool. It has a wicker baguette holder.
Yeah.
As an official accessory. I mean, how much more French can you get? Other than maybe this thing going on strike, that's pretty much it. It's like, that is, it is just, it's, they really, I hate to sound like I'm gushing over because I'm not, but it's just very cool. When you see it in the flesh, they've done a really nice job on it. The interior is actually really good as well. It's kind of better quality in some bits than you would expect it to be. Like they kind of, like the roof lining has this kind of really nice kind of quilted effect, which any other car manufacturer would just put normal headlining in. You know, like they've kind of gone, yeah, we could just do that and nobody would complain about it, but they've gone, we can add a bit more style to this, which is...
Yeah, it's got some flair to it and it's clean. They haven't gone too far trying to take idiosyncrasies from the original one and make them fit. It's just enough.
Yeah.
It is quite perfect. You wouldn't really change too much about it. You know, you could look at this without the badge and go, it's a Renault 5.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, because they haven't... Because this is only an EV, it means they've been able to create proportions on it that really work. Like the bonnet is quite short, has very little overhangs. It's... Which you couldn't really do with if you then had to go and fit in a normal thing. If they had to make this like with a normal petrol engine, suddenly the proportions would get a bit out of whack because of safety features and because of how things have to be designed now.
Yeah,
so
and the bonnet has to be a certain distance
all that
above
kind of stuff,
the engine.
But because of an EV, they've been able to kind of package it that little bit easier. There's going to be a couple of different batteries with it, so you get a 40 or 52 kilowatt hour. So it'll have either 300 or 400 kilometer range. It's not going to be very quick. So it's either going to be like 95 horsepower up to 150 horsepower, which for a little car like that is actually probably fine. It's still going to feel zippy because it's electric, but there is going to be an Alpine. It's called an A290, and that is going to come probably a year after this. It's going to come probably 2025.
Yeah,
the Renault 5 isn't going to come until 2025 anyway.
I don't want a more powerful version because they've done a very good job of not doing what every other manufacturer does by making a hatchback an SUV because they hide the batteries in the floor.
No. So the Alpine is basically, it's the same car body wise, chassis wise. I imagine they'll add a little bit more power to it, but when I did a preview of it, about like a year ago, maybe a little bit longer ago, of the concept of the A290 Alpine, it was very much, the vibe was, we're not going to go crazy horsepower figures. We're going to tweak the suspension. You know, it's got multi-link rears. You know, it's going to have the right sort of setup. A bit like the A110 is like this gorgeous.
Less is truly
car.
more.
Exactly. It's like, no, we're not adding loads of power, but we're making it light and we're making it handle, and that's kind of what Alpine is going to do with this.
And the result in this case is an actual hatchback that
Absolutely.
looks like a hatchback and isn't Ioniq 5 sized.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's hatchback sized.
Yes. Now, I don't know, I can't talk about Alpine pricing yet, but I know with the Renault 5, it's going to be like sub 30 grand, which... I know 30 grand is still a lot of money, but for a brand new EV...
In the world we live in.
In the world we live in today,
that's only 10 grand more than a Microlino.
There you go. And we... Microlino. Yes, so there you go. That's what's going on. But while I was at the show, and while I was kind of mooching around the car, having a look at it, I was able to grab a quick chat with Gilles Vidal, who is, if you don't know already, the head of Renault Design, and basically give us a little bit more insight into what the Renault 5 is like. So here you go.
Oh,
All good?
Very busy since this morning.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit busy.
Much happening today?
A few things.
Last time I saw you was I think Rafale. We did a preview day. Okay, Renault 5.
Here we go.
How happy are you with it?
Very happy, and it's funny, we had this discussion since this morning. Actually, we've been around this for 3 years now.
Yes.
So we don't see it anymore as you discover it today, I suppose. So we're pretty confident that it's a cool project, and it's so stunning since this morning, to see the crazy feedback about it.
The reaction.
Because, for us, it's like, okay, we've done it.
You see it every day.
Yeah, exactly. So you lose track of what it is, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously there was that great concept, and the big thing, and the big overriding thing is that you've remained so true to the concept.
Yes.
Do you want to talk me through, like, obviously there's a whole team of you working on this, but are there certain aspects that you really love about this that you were able to keep or able to have in terms of the design details?
Actually, we did try not to keep everything as the concept, and the concept was done super quickly.
Yes.
In like 2 months, not even, for Luca to present early 21. And
maybe
so
just even on that, like, why was that such a quick decision to make?
Actually, Luca, as he said when he spoke, when he joined the company, there was already this idea of doing possibly a Renault 5 for the brand.
Yeah.
And the idea was born at design, and there was actually a full-scale model in the design studios. And when you visited, he went around everything and everywhere, and he noticed that full-scale model among everything else, and he said, "We're doing it." That's quick decision making. That's quick decision making. So
I'm sure Luca was like a kid in a sweet shop. When he
exactly. So and I joined myself just 2 months later or something.
Yeah.
And then he said, okay, I need a concept car for the end of the year or beginning of 21. And I need a Dacia concept car. I need something for each brand. So there was a Formula One for Alpine. There was the big stuff for Dacia, and this for.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, you need it in 2 months. So we rushed.
No problem.
Of course, it's feasible. So anyway, we did without an interior, of course, but we did it super quick, and then it started already to evolve and mature compared to this older full-scale model that was lying around. So it didn't actually look like this exactly. It was obviously still a new Renault 5 kind of.
Yes.
So and then we said, okay, because Luca was very clear it was going to be a production car straight away. So we said, parallel to that, we start the real project anyway.
Okay. Because you
so,
knew it's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So it needs to be that. There's no design competition between designers like in every other project or nothing like that. We just execute that as close as possible. So straight away we worked with advanced engineering platform people to get the right proportions.
Yeah.
We had big discussions with Gilles Vidal, the big head of engineering. Okay, how do
Which he did a great job to make this.
Because actually that's a very short version of our platform. 3-meter 92 altogether. The wheels in the corners, fairly big wheels for that kind of size car. So really, he actually delivered. He gave us the ideal proportions, which is half of the job done actually.
Yeah.
Still, the other half is is quite challenging nonetheless. And then we went around and we said, okay, let's everything that we envisioned for the concept, to all those bits and pieces from the 5 and the Super 5 and the turbo shoulders and so on.
The rear lights as well.
Exactly. We said, okay, whatever we do is going to go into production. And so the fact that there's no glass above, but everything is actually the glass and it's sculpted. Every detail. And of course, we had no interior, so we had to just like.
But you really going big on the 5 logo. The one feature I love is on the bonnet.
I know.
This is. I was trying to think earlier. Is there a car that's had a display screen on a bonnet? I couldn't think of one. And actually, what interested me as well was earlier on we had the bonnet open, but you can't see it, so it's all just sits in on
very
top.
thin, actually.
So,
Was this? Oh, I mean, obviously you've got that. It's the nod to the old 5 and all that, but to put that in was quite a.
It was actually on the show car, on the concept car. It was the hatch for this actually.
For
we
the
wanted
charger.
to charge
Okay.
here.
That's
what we explained with the concept car. And then we started. That's the one thing that changed, but not for the better. I think.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to do this first in there with an opening hatch. And we said, okay, the movement, the ergonomics movement is not so good actually.
Yes, yeah.
People will get worried about water gathering.
Well, that's what I remember.
accumulating in there.
Honda had that with the Honda E, and they had it on. People weren't
And
sure
so we
about
said,
it.
okay, maybe it's not such a good idea, but still the idea of having this
Something-
graphic there,
something
which
there,
is the cooling grill on the original car,
Yes, yeah.
there still is cool. So what else can we find? Because this is not a good idea.
Yeah.
We said, how about the display of the charging then? Because of course you'd have it on your smartphone.
Sure,
and it's more precise than even those 5
Yes,
tenths of
yeah, of
20%.
course, yeah.
But yet the fact that the car can express itself, can say, oh, here I am, like 40% or more, or whatever, or 100%. It's so delightful. It's so nice. It's these extra little tricks that makes the object emotional and cool, and
So does this only illuminate when it's stationary or when it's
when
parked,
it's
or
charging actually.
When it's charging, okay,
and you can switch it off because maybe some people don't
like
want in the middle of the street
or a quiet,
for everyone
yeah,
to see. But so you can have
Yeah.
it off, of course.
Yeah.
But if you want to have it on, then by chunks of 20%,
as
it will tell you.
Yes.
And what's cool also in terms of psychology of reassurance is that when there's 2, it's 20% or more. It's 40 or between 40 and 60. So you know that it's in the positive psychologically what you see. It's there's no bad surprise.
Yes,
there's
of
only a
course.
good surprise.
Yeah. It's just a really nice detail, and it's just lovely how it sits flush. Oh, there's a little bit of a you've got a little bit of rain,
but still
it's just very, very neat design. It's just really, really nice. The lights as well are it's a very expressive face.
Yes,
it's
there's a trick actually. This thing here that you see is micro optics.
Okay.
So this doesn't have a function of putting light on the road.
Okay.
That's behind.
Yes, yeah.
The light flux will go through this without being
Interrupted. Yes.
And this is like on a manga or a cartoon. The little highlight on the eye.
Yeah.
That's what gives it life when you draw an eye. In a cartoon or a portrait.
Yeah.
So that's what gives it the life, the spark in the eye.
It's like all these hundreds of little dots in it.
Yeah, exactly. It's laser engraved, and there's a light source on the edge of that.
That just catches it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a niche.
And it's still on at night, and the flux will still.
But still,
not be,
okay. So it's not
damaged.
just a daytime running like thing. Because what I like about the front of it is that you've kind of got a slightly not aggressive, but a sporty stance.
Yes.
But it still has this friendly kind of face to it.
Face,
So it's it's not. It's neither one nor the other, but it's a really nice balance of
that's
it.
what we were trying to find, this balance.
Yeah.
So it's not.
And the proportions are really nice on it. That's the one thing that
sits quite nicely actually. It's
and obviously hiding the rear door handle makes it look more like the 3-door 5 originally did as well. So it's a really neat design. I like this was the rain gully was the detail on this, or
on the old 5 it was a kind of gutter, chrome gutter for the water.
Yeah.
But also the turbo had this added on chunky up
Yes,
piece
yeah.
that would wrap around the tail, I mean the wing.
Yes, yeah.
So we made it go around for the turbo spirit.
Also the seats. I have to talk about the seats because they're so cool as well.
But they are the turbo seats actually, with a strong structured, side support.
Yes, yeah.
The H, confection, stitching and so on.
Yeah.
And yet, unlike the turbo, it's not compressing your body.
Yeah,
it's quite generous. Obviously, you don't want sporty.
With all types of people driving.
car.
Yeah. But even a lot of the details, like, and the dashboard on the passenger side, like all that
with
stitching,
the stitching,
and even the roof line.
Yeah,
I love the
squares.
roof lining with the
squares.
squares, which it's nice that design elements have made it through the car, where a manufacturer might just go, we'll just put a roof lining in, but you've gone, no, let's put a kind of quilted effects.
Yeah, what's interesting actually, in the 60s or 70s, people had those kind of ideas and it made it to production.
Yeah.
And today nobody questions those areas.
Yeah,
There's no why we do only Rolls-Royce does the stars, the crazy stars.
Yeah.
And so we should deliver those delightful little things, for people to enjoy and not be boring up there. you know?
Yeah. I mean, like throughout your career, you've worked on some really great cars over the years with some great brands. Taking on a Renault 5 was a bit of kind of added pressure.
Obviously. It's much more difficult to do something like this. We got the questions a few times actually like this. Is it easier to do this? Or no, it must be easier to do this than start from a blank sheet of paper, but it's the opposite.
I would say it's the opposite.
Exactly.
Because people remember it.
Yeah.
And if you do something and people go, "Oh, you've ruined it."
Exactly. You have to be right. You have to play it right, basically, and it's much more difficult.
Yes, but it's. I think it's turned out really well.
Well, thank you.
I mean, I can't wait to drive it, but I think
it's so good
seeing this on the... It's always nice to see it on a motor show stand, but for me, the acid test is when I see it parked on a street somewhere.
In the middle of everything else. I know.
Yeah.
It's even for us, it's a rediscovery of our design, actually. When it sits in the street among other cars, it's really when it's happening.
Do you enjoy, in your position at the moment, having cars like this and then having cars like the Scenic, which are more... you've kind of got these... two lines of design happening. You've got the kind of we've already seen a hint of the Renault 4, the Twingo, which I am already fully in love with, by the way.
But what we're trying to do in our design strategy, we will have a few, not too many actually, but a few what we call legendary icons. So the 4, the Twingo is actually closer, it's not so old, and we're only going back to the original design, which was the best ever.
Of course.
But there's no interruption of the Twingo name anyway. So it's slightly different, yet it relates, obviously. And then we have what we like to call future icons. So we are trying to design, I hope you will see that in the future models that are still confidential, but we are trying to design cars with the potential of becoming an icon one day. So it should stand out from the crowd, it should be stunning, it should be special anyway, at least. And so this philosophy of legendary icons, future icons, that's what we're trying to build, basically.
Yes. It's a nice to have that duality between them. And obviously there's a pretty extensive back catalogue of models in Renault as well.
So not everything has potential, not everything it has to be right within the right timing for the right reasons. But there's potential. Potential for sure.
So there you go. That was Gilles Vidal there. Pretty interesting, right?
A man who no doubt is quite happy with how things are going after that weekend.
I'm pretty sure he poured himself a very large beer and gave himself a very big pat on the back after the reception that car got at the show. Definitely. Rightly
so. It's cool. Can't wait for it. They had all the colours out. It was a really nice presentation.
Colours, blue, green, yellow. The yellow looks fucking cool. But also, they did a navy colour there, and it looks really, really cool as well. So.
Them 4 colours are somewhat reminiscent of another Renault that launched in 4 colours.
You're
very close to my heart.
One of your number one fetishes in life.
Yeah. For those who don't know, I'm quite a big fan of the original Renault Twingo.
So as am I, not as much as you. I'm not that far down the rabbit hole, but yeah.
I own one. I own a very early green one currently.
Pistachio green?
Yeah, coriander green officially.
Coriander green. My apologies.
Yeah, I have an early 93 one, which makes me very excited because the R5 is not the only teed up retro throwback from Renault.
So this I find even more interesting than a Renault 5 is that yes, Renault is or has already shown a modern day interpretation with the same sort of retro treatment of a brand new Renault Twingo, but as a super affordable EV. Because look, everybody's got an EV these days. That's just the way it is. But
little hatchbacks, I don't really care. It's kind of it works in that sense.
Of a fully electric modern Renault Twingo, and the best thing is this thing. You've seen the picture of it. It looks.
Seen the pictures, and I'm very afraid because it looked brilliant.
It's too good to be true, right?
Yeah,
and I can't believe it's not butter.
It kind of looks so good that they're going to ruin it by the time it comes out. They're going to ruin it. But then they've came out with the Renault 5 looking like the Renault 5.
Yes.
And it gives better kind of chances that this might look like the Twingo.
Yes. This is going to be pretty interesting. Now it's still so it's about 2.5 years away, but it has potential for even broader things, because Renault has kind of not officially said yes, but not officially really, staunchly denied the fact that they are also talking to Volkswagen about kind of sharing some of the development of these, because it's basically, as you may or may not know, developing a brand new car is an incredibly expensive business. So the more people you can get involved in it kind of makes it a little bit easier. It's a bit like a timeshare. So VW need some small, more affordable EVs because they want to sell them to lots of German people.
And they want to cut down their current lineup and just focus on a higher quality of car in coming years.
So it kind of makes sense for them to kind of maybe potentially could be getting into bed with Renault and doing, Renault will make the Twingo and then they'll maybe make the Polo or the Lupo or whatever. It's, they're basically their version of it. So in much the same way that you have the Volkswagen ID3 and you have the Cooper Born, they're basically the same car, interchangeable with different badges on it, and this is what we could have. So that's pretty interesting. Now, we did also have, while I was in Geneva, I was such a busy boy in Geneva, I sat down with Lawrence van den Acker, who is the head of Renault Group Design. This is the man that's kind of not necessarily designing the cars, he's kind of laying out the whole path of the future of where the whole group is going, which obviously includes Dacia and all the other stuff. So had a quick chat with him. Have a listen to this, get a few more tidbits of information. We've seen such a shift in the overall design across all the models, really.
Yes.
But especially with Scenic, it's kind of it really pushes that kind of new look. But then at the same time, you have Renault 5, which is totally different, leans very much into that retro heritage kind of thing. So it's you've almost got kind of two kind of design lines.
That's exactly right. In fact, to be honest, when Luca came on board, he was less driven, was less dogmatic, when it comes to design of the front end and having an identity. When I came in 2009, the Renault lineup was all over the place, and they asked me to clean it up, if you will, and make it very recognizable. And then Luca came in, and then the pendulum swings.
Well, every CEO wants to put their stamp on things.
And I realized he wants to turn a page, So the deal we made, and I think it was a good deal, and it proves it today, is that I would move up, and the best way to get a new souffle, as they say, a new a new generation is to put a new designer in there. And I moved up a level. We got Gilles in Renault, David Durand in Dacia, etc. And it's working really well, and I can push them and pull them as hard as I can.
I mean, when I talk to those guys about design as well, that they really seem to like what electric offers them now, because there's a bit more flexibility. You don't have the mechanical, physical constraints in some positions of what we can, hard points in vehicle and things like that. And but also then we're seeing a much more very strong design language between the different things. Like Dacia is very much over there. You've got Renault now has this kind of two lane.
We call it the future icons and legendary icons. And we play the two cards for Renault, and I think this is good because authenticity, some of these sympathetic cars that people have good souvenirs about, is a card we can play that the competitors cannot play. So it's a story we can tell. We tap in the past and we tap into the future, and that works really well. Obviously, we are lucky that we don't have 14 brands, so we can have
a little bit easier.
At least it's 14 brands is 14 kids, And we have Dacia as an entry-level brand, very, very well defined, as you can see, and it's doing great actually. And then Renault as a popular brand, mainstream, modern, technological, and then Alpine as the
the halo flagship kind of
so
racing side of things.
The foundation is there, And then we have a CEO who doesn't just like design, but he loves design.
He does, yeah. I mean, I remember, I dealt with him. When
I have the proof. I have the proof here. He is sketching secretly,
all the time.
But he agrees that he is not.
I'm not a designer. No, but he's passionate about it. I remember that right from his birthdays and in Seat and Cooper and all that kind of stuff as well. But he was very hands-on. But is he kind of hands-on without being too hands-on in the way?
No, he is too hands-on.
So
no, but it's a good thing, to be honest, because he's pushed us very hard. The company needed it too, and he doesn't give up. And to be honest, for me, the keys to the success were the combination of Luca plus Gilles Vidal, the head of engineering. Because you need to know what you want, but you also need to make it happen. And Gilles Vidal is also someone with a very good sense of design, proportion, what it takes to make a good car. Ironically, I would say that we couldn't have done the R5 if it weren't an EV. Because thanks to the EV, the engine compartment is much more compact. You can put the big wheels on the corners. The wheels can still turn. Your radius is relatively small. I think 10.2 meters. Thanks to the fact that the engine of the powertrain is compact.
And you have that proportion of the car then as well.
Yeah, if it were an ICE version, then we had to add 150 millimeters to the nose.
And it starts to sort of lose its...
The thing would have fallen apart. So yes, it's a retro futuristic car, but it could only exist now, So and when we tested it with customers, what was interesting is they think it's futuristic. They thought it was. It doesn't look vintage,
It's not like.
It's not a Harley Davidson.
It's not like but it's also not really. It's kind of a homage, but not. It's taking it. You can very clearly see if you know what a Renault 5 is. Oh, okay. But it does look like a Renault 5 from the future.
It's not nostalgic.
Yes, and it would be very easy maybe to lean too much into that, to just go, we'll just do what we did. But also to put a fresh face on it, and then.
But it allows us to tell a story about the brand, and this was a period in time when Renault was, had a heyday and was even popular in England. I mean, how the Brits and the Irish love to hate the French. I mean. And this goes both ways, So this was a good period, and I think the nice thing about sometimes these cars, 40, 50 years later, you forget the bad stuff and you just remember the good stuff.
I own a very, very old Dujevaux, so
so you know exactly.
I don't know how much heartache it is, but I also. But I think what really surprised me as well about with the R5 was the interior of it. You kind of expected a little bit more basic interior, but actually there's a lot of quality, a lot of detail fit in there. Stuff like the headlining, the seats and all that. Like stuff, they're kind of details that I look at that designers maybe don't necessarily have to do, or it's the sort of thing that won't make it through the process of making it a production car, because somebody will go, it's too expensive to do, we'll just put a normal headlining in. But was that always a very we have to really keep these details?
because the thing is, and I've had the cars that struggle the most are the cars that are not homogeneous. What you get an impression when you look at the car, and then you get close, and then your expectation goes up, and then when you open the door and you go like then you drive it, and then the car is not homogeneous, and you leave with a bad impression. So the exterior is so striking. In a positive sense, that when you open a door, we needed to be up there, so that you're not disappointed. And evidently, we had a Renault 5 Turbo in the studio, and I think that the instrumentation panel with this block of Olivetti, 70s Italian design. I said we need to make something that is the equivalent of that in modern days. Like you could take the piece and put it on your desk, and have it as a nice object. And the seats of the Turbo, those thin seats with the
very slabby.
I mean, they sit very well. So no, we didn't have much convincing to do with Luca to do that stuff.
That was an easy win for.
I think Luca, whenever you show him something that he wants, then you have a fairly good chance that
Yeah, yeah.
he will fight
Not too
for
much
you.
convincing.
Yeah. But it remains a challenge.
Yeah.
Cost on an EV, especially a popular EV, it will remain a challenge.
Yeah, and that's the thing with EVs at the moment. It is still very much it's a cost thing for people, and it's how you get that down. And we're starting to see that kind of slide now towards greater affordability, but I guess that's also I imagine this must have been quite a tricky balance then to have those nice design features which we know are normally expensive to have in a series production car.
Yeah.
So how it must have been a real challenge to get that across the line in the form that it is.
Yeah, but design, I would argue, is relatively inexpensive. I mean, the real cost is in the battery itself. There all of a sudden it's a few thousand euros. But a nicer seat or the pattern in the roof. You're talking euros. You're not talking. The big money is in the battery, the chemistry, the materials.
And the scalability of that as well, in terms of if you can share that across different versions, different models,
But we'll do it. We'll share the platform with the Renault 4 that will come out next year. So we're looking for ways to leverage, in fact, the package that we got.
That's really the next great retro one you're going to have coming down the line as well.
Yeah, and I think there's countries that were Renault 5, countries that were Renault 4. I mean, depending, it's not the same everywhere, at least in Europe.
I think in Ireland we were maybe more Renault 4 than 5. But
it depends. It depends. I think Holland was also quite Renault 4. All these teachers that would go on holidays for 6 weeks to France, because if you have a good, this is what a friend of mine explained to me once, that a good French car is when you see it, even if it's dusty on the side of a road, you drop everything and you want to drive to France. This is kind of the measure of what a French car stands for. And I think what's cool too is that people that love French cars, they also love generally everything that France has to offer. It goes beyond. It's the lifestyle, the food, the nature. Whereas if you buy a German car, it's not necessarily the case.
It's it's a very clear difference in terms of the approach
it doesn't make you want to drive to Germany and spend your holidays there necessarily.
But then I guess after that, the one thing we've had a little preview of already is this Twingo, this smaller, more affordable thing. What we've seen, how are we likely to see that being? Are you going to do a Renault 5 on it? Are you going to give us the car that you've hinted in production form?
Yeah, Luca is very keen on making a promise and getting everyone wound up, and then keeping it. And I think he's proven it with the Scenic and now with the Renault 5, and it's probably no surprise, but it works. I mean I remember when we showed the Renault 5 in 2021, I said to Luca, "Oh my God, it's way too early. And if you show it, we got to do it. There's no choice." And I said, and everyone will know it. It turned out to be a good pressure. A positive pressure. And he said, "But Lawrence, nobody can copy us. Because these are icons." And I think he was right.
I mean, I think also maybe, like you said, it lights that fire when you see that quite a dramatic concept that the 5 was back then. You kind of thought, okay, well, you can't.
You could see everyone was kind of. Everyone was kind of like, oh, this is going to go, this is going to disappear, this is going to disappear. You could see everyone making...
Because that's what we're used to seeing, these amazing concept cars, and then suddenly it gets watered down, and that's changed, and suddenly the proportions have changed, and it's never quite...
and we're there like, and we're saying like, but we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. This is why, like I said, Gilles Vidal was our savior.
And obviously, I haven't driven yet, but
it's a hood to drive, because... It has all the basics, it's low center of gravity, wheels in the corners, lots of power initially, but it has multi-rear suspension, multi-link rear suspension. I mean, to have a multi link rear suspension on a car that's 3 meter
In this,
92. It's unheard of.
Was that part of the decision because did you already decide at the time we're going to have an Alpine version and that was going to be part of the strategy, and did that have an influence on that?
Yeah, I mean, once you started to talk Renault 5, you immediately start to think about the Alpine version because, I remember a friend of mine had a black one with the red stripes and the solid wheels, and Alpine needs some cars, because A110 is not enough to build a brand about.
Yeah. It's a good talking. It starts the conversation. But we need
and
more.
so definitely they needed it, and then the question is, do you do 2 suspensions or do you just say bollocks? We just give it to everyone.
Yeah.
And luckily that's what we did.
Yeah, and I mean I saw the concept of the A290 that looks very, very different, but you have enough differentiation between the 2 cars when you see them side by side.
I think you won't mistake one for the other.
Yeah.
Obviously, I cannot deny the genetics.
No, of course.
But
that was the Alpine story anyway.
Yeah.
It was never a bespoke car. But
And obviously we had a discussion around. Is it good or bad for the brand? And this is kind of a glass half full, glass half empty, type of discussion. But we've seen with Esprit Alpine, the top of the line that we have on Austral and on Rafale and on some of the other, even on Clio. Actually, it's
on pretty much everything now.
It's selling really well, and customers didn't have all the doubts and the deliberations that we had. Customers, if they get a nicer car, they're quite willing to accept it.
Will this be, without going into future product, but will we see more of this kind of heritage, like tapping the heritage for future models? Do you think this is a recipe for success with EVs in particular?
Yeah, I think, well, to be honest, I think with Renault 5, Renault 4 and Twingo, I think that's not bad, and it allowed us, again, going back to future icons, legendary icons, to create a double offer also in every segment. Because the idea is that in the B segment we would have Renault 5, Renault 4, and in the ICE hybrid we would have Clio Captur, In the C segment we would have Scenic and Megane, and on the ICE and hybrid we have Austral, etc. So it allows us to have a double offer and not mix up the choice. Those, somebody who's in for a Clio hybrid, which is a perfectly reasonable choice, he will not mistake it for a Renault 5 EV. So it allows us to tell 2 stories and to attract 2 different customers. But I think when we showed the Twingo, it was kind of a repeat of, do we need to show it already? And then Luca made a promise. We said it was 28, and then he said it's going to be 26, and then
and now it's next week.
But then I saw the buzz that the Twingo created. I've never had so much likes on, in such a short time on a
the first gen Twingo was such a design icon
in
so many ways. Every time
I remember it. It's the first time I kind of looked at a Renault for the first time.
And it totally embraces that kind of anthropomorphic look of a car having a personality or a face, really having a face, not just the front of a car. And I think also that friendliness has a big appeal of a car like that as well. Especially when we have such a big SUV world. When you have a little car like that, actually, it's much more charming.
And the how can I say? It's not the best way to make a lot of money, but it fits with our DNA of democratizing innovation, and democratizing modernity and bringing EV to the people. It's all nice and good to make EVs, for 7 people with a 100 kilowatt battery and stuff like this, but this is not the main market,
And that people don't have.
They don't have the money. What the world needs is smaller EVs for reasonable price and reasonable.
Having 3 electric Twingos is better than having 1 big SUV.
And then, it's not just even that. Then they have to be locally produced. for decarbonization. They have to be cradle to cradle. I mean, frankly, my job has gotten a lot more complex than when I was young.
What is the hardest bit of your job right now? Like today, like as in, what are the biggest challenges you're facing?
Well, I would say the market is in such a transformation that the card you can play with design is still very important, because design remains the purchase reason number one, but it's not by all means the only one. And what you see, especially in a sea change in technology, where there is a complete breakthrough in cost in both ways, cars that come on the market that are very cheap and cars that come on the market that are very expensive. Design can do so much, but not everything. If there is I think the Megane E-Tech is a beautiful car, for instance, and we're very proud of it. But if there's a competitor that is 10,000 euro cheaper, even if our car is nicer, is it 10,000 euro nicer than the competition? I mean, this is a big ask for design to do. I think design can maybe seduce you to spend 1,000 euro more, or 1,500, or if we're lucky 2,000, but then you kind of reach the limit, So I think this is very expensive. This is very difficult to keep fighting for design when we know the whole program is under pressure. And at the same time, what is extremely gratifying is if we do a Duster, the new Duster, which I think design-wise is just a jewel. There's not a wrong line on it, and we see with the U-clip and with the content, with very few means, and still make a car that I say I'd buy one,
I mean, it's like making a great dish. You have very basic ingredients, but you can still make something.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I went to Italy for the first time in my life, and you have spaghetti with olio, aglio, and just a bit of basilicum, and it's all you need actually.
But it's how they do it.
Yeah, but it's the ingredients are really good. So frankly, being a designer right now is super exciting, but I've never had the impression I knew so little.
Really?
I've never had so much experience, and I feel like I need to study every day now about AI and chemistries and kilowatt hours, and it's a new language.
And that's it. It's all changed.
Yeah, but I guess the same.
It's the same for us as well. I mean, it's we get some all sorts of questions we get from people now. Is not just how does it drive? It's what efficiency are you getting? What's this and that? Or
and sustainability, circular economy.
But the single biggest challenge we face is people go, well, what's the real world range of it? It's what I get asked with almost every electric cars. What will it really do?
Yeah, it depends what you do.
Well, how long is a piece of string? Because I could get in and drive it around the city and I'll get this, and you can drive it down the motorway at 140 kilometers an hour and you get something completely different. And you can't answer that. So all we say is, well, you use WLTP, which isn't perfect, but at least you know that that's the standard that every car has gone through. So you can kind of work out if you deem that, I only get 80% of WLTP. Well, then just calculate that off every range figure, because they've all done the same test. But that's the thing that.
It's very psychological.
I think the biggest mistake that the industry made and the media made early on with EVs was it fixated on range, and the range figure was the one headline figure, because in the early days when you have the early EVs, they didn't have it, so everyone was like, this will do 120 kilometers of range, and range became the thing that people fixated on. Now for almost every EV driver, I say the range is enough.
I agree.
If you charge at home, it's enough. How much do you need?
I mean, the best proof is the Dacia Spring. Average, maybe you heard us saying this, but we can now see how people use it. Average usage today is 31 kilometers.
And that's pretty much all across Europe.
And we know that the battery never falls below 50%. Because these people drive around town, do their shopping, go to work, pick up the kids, plug it in 220 at night,
And that's it.
And then that's it. And the next day they do it again.
Yeah.
So the car is never empty. And
Yeah.
it makes us think we could make a smaller battery. You
So
know?
we did a range test. I know we're dragging on a little bit here. We did a range
Yeah,
test
sorry,
where we
just
had
have one last
to
question.
we had to run them all to zero with modern EVs, and we had the spring was one of them. And once we got to zero, we were in a proving ground. We said, how far after zero would it go? That thing just would not die. I was driving around in circles for I think I did 34 kilometers after
which
zero.
is a very long
and I was just
time.
like going, this won't stop. But that shows you, efficiency and weight
Yeah,
and size.
because
is-
they don't want to have you sit by the side of the
Yeah,
road.
exactly.
Obviously,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, I mean.
yeah. But
But
yeah,
I
always
remember
think
when
it's
I was
enough.
because I drive an EV obviously now also. When my alert came on in a gasoline car, I had 80 kilometers and I was stressed. Now 80 kilometers in EVs
Yeah.
is just
yeah.
fine because you can it's very reliable,
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
and you know exactly. And then you find out that 30 kilometers is actually quite.
It's fine.
You can find anything you want in
You
it.
can be down to 10% and go, I'll charge it tomorrow.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
so, yeah.
Lots of talk on retro throwbacks.
Yes.
That creates a little bit of a conundrum for me.
Okay, go on.
I love them.
Yes.
They're great.
Yes.
You kind of feel like you're stuck in the mud, though, if you only like revised version of things you liked in the past and none of the new cars.
Yes.
I know more recently the Countach caused a big stir. That was very,
yeah.
you either loved it or hated it.
The Countach, the modern Countach was a low point for Lamborghini.
You see?
That was them just going, no, but it wasn't necessarily because of the styling of the Countach. It was because they said, we're just going to put a different body onto an Aventador and charge you £2.5 million, and all of you fools are going to be stupid enough to fucking buy one.
Yes, it was a license to print money, but to be fair to Lamborghini, they haven't changed the shape or much of any of their cars from the Countach. They do kind of keep that kind of wedge shape.
Yeah.
It wasn't hard to make one look like it used to look. But this is the trend now where all the stuff that we currently really get excited about is just new versions of all things.
Yes.
Your new Air Jordans.
Yeah, re-releases.
So, is that, just
Is that
being...
what? Is that?
Are you being a stickler or are you just not getting with the times? Because I love all these throwbacks, and especially when they're really well executed.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, you got the Renault 5. It's cool. You got the Twingo. It's going to be cool. There is a Renault 4 coming, which is going to be another retro
Has
version of.
a singular car done more for a company than the Dodge Charger and Challenger?
Yes,
That's just gone off production.
yes, I know.
You know,
Look, I think because this was the kind of thing that I put to the guys when I was talking to them in Geneva. Was like, look, with Gilles and Lawrence, I was like, you're kind of having this duality to your range now. You're making like modern cars, like the Clio, the Capture, the Scenic, all that kind of stuff, like modern, all right, subjective, but like let's say like good looking but slightly generic electric cars. And then you're doing this whole other line of Renault 5 and Twingo and like all your like icons of your past, which is how they refer to it. They literally refer to these cars. They know this is our heritage, this is our icons. That's why we're reproducing them or reimagining them in this modern age.
but
And in a way, I can't really fault them because you can kind of see the success. Like when BMW acquired Mini, and then they relaunched the Mini, which famously partly designed by Frank Stevenson and all that kind of stuff. It was a hit. It was a really big hit. Fiat probably only still exists to this day because of the job they did in reviving the 500. Every other 500 after that was fucking terrible. But the original 500, which is still in production 14 years later, like that just kind of shows you the longevity and the success of this thing. So I can kind of see where Renault are going with this. Probably better than, they're not doing a Lamborghini and making 100 of them and charging £1 million each for them.
I love that they're leaning into the history. I love that they're going, yeah, let's make this fun, not just take the name, make something serious and just, sell it on that. But you do kind of have to step back and go, ooh, we're just going, remember all these things we did 30 years ago? They were great.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, it's like you can't. It is a tricky balance. They can't lean on your past that heavily, but at the same time, look. I mean, I look at the Renault 5, and honestly, I look at the Renault 5, and I think, man, they're probably going to sell a ton.
I
of
hope
these
they
things.
do. I hope they
A
sell
ton of these
as
things.
many
the
as they can
Twingo even
make.
more so. The Twingo, when that first picture came out, I think I literally within seconds you had a picture
was
of
in my
'cause
inbox,
I was just like with 10 exclamation marks after it. So like I can see what they're doing. Then again, like you look at other brands have done it. Like Hyundai have done this with the Ioniq 5, which is fabulously Giugiaro-esque in its design, but in a big.
Well, that's the
SUV.
flip side of my point is that we're naysaying a lot of modern. We don't like too many modern designs.
Yeah,
we love these throwbacks. Hyundai, I do think, do a very good job. They're throwing a lot at the wall and seeing what sticks. The Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6 don't look like they're from the same company.
Yeah.
They're seeing what works. Kia, I think, are a little still too far off with their lights on the sides of the cars now. But Hyundai are trying stuff, and some of it's quite good. Some of it's getting there. Meanwhile, we're just going mental over stuff that was out when we were children.
Yeah. But that's the thing, though. Like, we're of a car buying age for on average in Europe, and then there are a lot of people that are just simply not interested in another generic crossover, and they want something different. And thankfully, people are starting to realize that SUVs are not the solution to everything, and actually having a smaller car is not it's not this weird thing to be embarrassed about. It's actually much cooler to have a right-sized car rather than, which in Ireland we don't get, but in Europe you go to Rome, you buy a smart car because there's not enough space, so you just buy a small car and that's it. Whereas here, you buy a smart car, people kind of what do you got this clown car for? Like, so our mentality towards cars here is kind of really arse about face. So it's great that cars like this are coming out now, and they're better than, like the Zoe was an okay electric car, but it was of its time. And now it's kind of just not really that good compared to what else is out there. This suddenly could be like, okay, the 5 is a natural replacement for that.
I hope people
cooler.
totally embrace it. And with how Mini have kind of gone in their designs, and more so their size, there is
nothing Mini about Mini anymore.
Yeah. And I've always been the biggest Mini fan, but now they are just too big.
The new Mini now, every time I look at that new Mini, which obviously you can get the electric or you can get it with a combustion engine, but it just, something doesn't look right with that car. And I think it's just a mixture of everything. Like, they've taken the cladding off the side. It's got these flush door handles now, and it just looks really...
From the F56, they start getting a very, very long front overhang,
Yeah.
which that was always the thing. From the original Mini into the Millennium Mini, they had the wheels at each corner.
Yeah.
That was it. The wheels could not be any further out or they'd be off the car.
Yeah.
That was always a thing. And then the F56 got a big overbite, and it's continued on where these overhangs have gotten longer and longer. The cars themselves have gotten bigger. The Clubman is huge.
Yeah.
So
the Countryman now, I mean, it's funny when I did a preview of the Countryman in Munich last year before it was unveiled, and there was a picture of, I got a picture taken next to the car for like the thumbnail for the YouTube video, and this thing is fucking enormous.
Yeah.
It's like full on SUV. It's like, this is nothing mini about this. It's like the name is now
it's
ironic.
not irony. It's past that. It's just silliness. But with them gone that way, and I don't think they're coming back from that.
No.
It does open the door for a new mini type vehicle to capture the hearts and be, lovable, friendly, kind of cool, chic, and well built. And I know there is, a bit of trepidation there saying about it, something French, but it does look in its quality to be kind of there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really cool designs coming out with stuff now, and I think, yeah, Renault 5 definitely cool. Really interesting what's going to happen with that Twingo. I'm all on board for that. I think French cars are kind of getting a bit of a cool vibe.
French cars have always been interesting, except for that period from the mid 2000s to very recently. Previous to that, excellent. You'll find if you're into just go, why have they done that? French cars are for you. there's so much just weird shit that goes on with them. It's fascinating because no two are alike. Was the Renault 21 that came in 4 different wheelbases? Because you could have a transverse and a longitudinal engine, which was different sizes, and you could have a wagon and a hatch.
And wasn't that the one that the wagon was shorter than the hatch?
Yeah. It's wild. The Renault 4, the original one, is longer.
What drugs were they on back then?
It's longer on one side than the other, the Renault 4.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
There's so much just...
figure that out.
So you've managed to defy logic with this one. Anyway, French cars, interesting. Not always great, but definitely fun.
Yes, yeah. And design-wise, it's like or loathe it, but they've got some outrageously good designs.
I've never met someone who's on the fence about an Aventime.
Yeah.
They either like it or they hate it.
2 CVs, there you go. I own one, and people absolutely love it, you know?
And hate it.
And hate it. The only people who hate it are people who have to work on it, i.e. you.
Yes.
But I love it when it works. When it doesn't work, then I also hate it. But generally,
you don't see me shout mean things at it.
No, I know, yeah. Abusive. Like an abusive parent. Anyway, okay, well, look, bit of a very French themes episode.
There'll be more to come. Over as things go on, Twingos will get mentioned a lot around these parts.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to love. We're not going to talk about the more recent Twingos. We're only ever talking about the first generation.
The R133 was good. That was a good car. It was fun. It was decent.
Should we do an entire episode dedicated to the Renault Wind?
Is this episode 3 minutes long?
Oh, okay, right. And on that note, we'd like to thank you again for listening to the podcast. Hopefully we will be back next week after. As ever, the 50 to 70 podcasts are brought to you in association with 3FE Coffee. Go check them out at 3fe.com. Obviously, they've got stores all over Dublin. They've also got a great book out as well. Colin Harmon wrote a fantastic book all about what he knows about running coffee shops. So if you're thinking about opening a coffee shop someday, go and check that out. Get it all on 3fe.com. I've been Dave Humphreys.
I'm Cormac Singleton.
Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.